Welcome to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. Darce, how you doing?
Pretty good. We survived the first, what I'm calling the first official week of summer.
Yes, well, you survived. I just kind of did the same thing over and over again, but you survived. The kids are still here.
Kids are still here. We had a good week. I feel like the routines that we put in place went off fairly well.
All right.
The boys got, they're kind of, the good thing about doing what we're doing is it's very lax, right? Like, but,
There's no principal over your shoulder checking you. Should I do that?
Yeah,
do I
exactly.
Need to be checking your curriculum?
No, but, Leanne introduced kind of the structure of their day for the summer. And I think they enjoyed like the read aloud time, and I know they enjoyed like the crafts and stuff that we did. So far so good.
All right. So are you
I did
out
realize
of ideas yet, or
well, no, I'm not out of ideas, but one thing that
don't burn yourself out one weekend?
I know. One thing that I did quickly realize is I drastically underestimated the amount of snacks necessary to sustain us here. So
Gotcha.
we had more snacks this week on our grocery bill.
Our grocery bill did shoot up a little bit, that's for sure.
Yeah. They're home more and they just want to snack all the time. So
I know. I don't feel like we got to snack that much growing up, but they definitely
Maybe we
they
did.
get all the good snacks too.
Yeah, I know. So, but no, good. So far, so good.
Awesome.
You always forget to check in with our executive producer over here.
I hear him on the couch, yes.
Yeah. Cinco is getting in place.
Every now and then he checks in on an episode, sees how we're doing, audits us.
Audits us, yeah.
Well, it is Father's Day week. We have a week-long celebration in our house honoring
Oh, do we?
It's a new tradition I'm starting.
Oh.
Are you prepared?
I'm not. Honestly, I'm really not. I've only just begun to give a little thought to like.
Did you even remember it was Father's Day week?
No, I did remember it was Father's Day week, but
because you didn't show prep us for this one, so
no, I didn't. But it's more on you anyway. You're the dad.
Yeah.
But I've only begun to think about like what your gift is going to be. So
just
there's
one.
that.
It is Father's Day week, so just like we did with Mother's Day, we decided we would get the episode out a little quicker. That way you can all take these words of wisdom in and pass them along if you're a wife, or take them in if you are a husband or a dad. All of us have a dad.
Right.
Take it all in this week so you're prepared for Father's Day.
That's right.
We'll set the mood and the tone for you.
Yeah, let's talk fatherhood.
Yes. So, how are we going to do this?
Don't look at me like you just said. I really didn't show prep us too much.
It all began. Go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's talk about fatherhood then. For me, and we have 3 sons. I was thinking about this. The only thing I thought of is how we did the motherhood episode, and we kind of started from the beginning and moved forward. So let's do kind of the same thing here.
Okay.
I was thinking, and some of this, as always, it seems to build on previous episodes that we've done. So thinking back, we kind of did the gender role, so to speak, homemaking kind of episode.
Yeah.
And I really think this is where a lot of that builds upon that as a man. With fatherhood in particular, when we got married, everything went to another level as terms of like me being the man, you being the woman. We're a couple in the household. But in all honesty, when it's just the two of you, you're two people, and yeah, we're navigating the road together, but
Yeah.
you do your thing, I'll do mine. We'll check in, kind of meet up. We're still just kind of two people.
Yeah.
Neither one of us are fully dependent
Well,
on
because
the
yeah,
other.
exactly. Because you're responsible for each other as a couple, but you're also your partner is perfectly capable too,
Exactly.
and nobody's dependent on you yet fully
No,
anyway.
exactly. And so you can kind of just keep living your life as you have been.
Right.
But the moment we found out you were pregnant, everything changed. And I remember everything doesn't change like immediately at first. Like, yeah, oh my gosh, you have the first shock and awe of like, oh, we're
Yeah.
pregnant, we're gonna have a kid.
Also, we have to have a side note here. Before we got pregnant, Brian was like, "Yeah, we'll wait. We'll wait until like what's the safe thing? Like 12 weeks or so before we tell anybody." Blah blah blah.
We made it like 2 days. Not even.
We didn't even make it 2 days.
Yeah, made it
I
2 hours.
vividly remember Brian when he's like pacing around. He likes to grab like a tennis ball and throw it against the wall, and I just
multiple stress balls around the house.
I just vividly remember you pacing around our house, throwing the tennis ball against the wall, and just being like, "I think we got to tell him today."
It's the right thing to do. Yeah, so after that initial shock and awe wears off, not a lot in the day-to-day changes for being a dad. But the first thing I remember feeling is when we had the gender reveal.
Okay.
And the leading up to that, and this is going to be kind of the theme of mine because, spoiler alert, I have 3 boys. Leading up into the first gender reveal, or we only did one, but the gender reveal, I remember thinking, am I team boy or team girl? How do I want to start off fatherhood? And I was team boy, and that clearly worked out multiple times over. But what was really funny is the moment that Blue Smoke came out, I was like, oh, yes, son, here we go. But then this just ultimate kind of weight descended on me of, oh my gosh, I have a son now. And then I decided to do that 2 more times. And not that it's, we'll kind of get into this in a minute, not that it's like a whole lot different, but being a dad and what that means for your kids in general.
Role model wise
yeah,
and stuff.
but especially for boys. And
right.
I've kind of done a little bit of thinking. Like I said, obviously I don't have any daughters, but I can kind of think about how it would be if I did have daughters, and probably maybe some of you will correct me down the road about where I'm off base here, but some of the similarities and differences of being a boy dad versus girl dad, and just the weight and responsibility, because it looks a lot alike, just a little bit different. But in that moment, I remember thinking like, oh man, this is all on me to prepare them for manhood.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and so, you.
Well, I think because if you have a daughter, it's not that the weight is necessarily maybe any less, but it's different. It's like I've got to protect her, maybe, or something like that.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, when you're a girl dad, you're the ultimate protector at that point for the rest of her life. But at that point, you're really more trying to emulate, like the pressure is to emulate the right kind of man for her to go out there and then marry.
Yeah.
And not that that's not a huge responsibility too, but when it's a son, it's like whatever they turn out to be, you feel like it's a direct reflection of you, right? Like, if they don't know how to throw a baseball, that's on you. So
ultimately down the road, you gain a little wisdom on that. Like, look, I can do all that I do, and it still can turn out differently than I think.
Of course, but there's still
I follow
in that moment.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking is like, oh my god, I have to teach him how to do everything, even if it's something I don't know how to do yet. I have to learn that now, pass that on. So that was the first thing that kind of hit me with with fatherhood, and then I would say we'll go back because I've been thinking this since the motherhood episode, and I never really snuck it in. But for any future dads, or maybe your wife's pregnant right now, or you're just going through it, your role in the delivery room is also equally important.
Oh,
I
yeah.
found that out.
No, we laugh because we have done we've done 3 natural births,
Yeah.
and not that the nurse team hasn't, showered me with kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just did that. But they want to like frame Brian's picture and
I
put it
may
on
or may not be on like the Hall of Fame at
They're always so impressed with Brian, and I'm like, hey, this is just me over here. I'm just the one that just actually did that.
Yeah, but you're all like screaming and whining and stuff like that.
Oh, that is not even true.
No, but in all kidding aside, honestly,
Yeah.
that was something, and you get better as you go. The first time you didn't really know, but I remember leading up to you're listening to all these birth hour podcasts,
Yes.
and we went to
I was reading books,
and we went to our birthing class at the
Yeah.
hospital and stuff like that. And you kept asking me like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, yeah, you kept pushing me to do stuff, and honestly, I wasn't. The timing I understand for you, it seemed right around the corner for me. I was like, we'll get to that later. And I did check in on a few things. And I remember, thankfully, because our first son came at 36 weeks. So thankfully I did it a little early. I kind of cleared my mind and thought about it. And again, this will kind of go to our gender roles episode, how we talked like in the midst of your wife birthing your child, she's got a lot going on. And this, in a lot of ways, it almost sets you up for how life's going to be. Because if you think about it, like you at home dealing with.
Yeah, I'm in the throes of it.
Yeah. And so I'm the one with perspective.
Yes.
When I come home from work, if you're strung out from how they've been acting, I'm the one who's not.
Yeah.
Whether I decide to turn it up a notch or turn it down a notch, I'm the one with, not that I always make the right decision, but I'm the one with perspective.
Yeah.
And you find out it's the same thing in that labor and delivery room.
Yeah.
And so we kind of game planned and prepped a little bit before we went in. We kind of talked, like I asked you and you told me like, this is what I think I'm going to want. This is what
and I told you like
expectations.
specifically, this is what I want. This is how I want you to encourage me. These
Yes.
specific words.
Yeah, exactly. And you did a very thorough job as usual. But then we get in there, and the first time it did not really go as planned at all. But
Yeah.
I realized, I'm also an information nut, so I started taking in everything from how to like read the computer they have you
Right.
like hooked up to and
The
stuff
monitors.
like that. Yeah, exactly. And just kind of figured out what worked. Like the first time we did it, it was like, okay, this worked and this didn't. And by the time we had our second and third kid, that is where like it's obviously an exaggeration, but I think I did a pretty good job in that room.
You did.
And I mean, our last kid, me and the nurse almost delivered Dylan ourselves.
Yeah.
And I had to ask her, like, have you ever done this before? Because we're about to do it right now.
Yeah.
And
we always try to warn them that last part happens fast for me.
they never seem to believe us.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, okay. And it's like, no, get the doctor in here.
Yeah, no, all jokes aside, though, but like, seriously, that is the first time where I remember really realizing, like, it doesn't matter if you're a doctor and it doesn't matter if you're a nurse and we're in this hospital. My wife's going through something, and now I'm in charge.
Yes.
I'm in charge.
Well, and I think that's what the kind of the overarching point that you're getting to is like, I'm kind of in the throes of it, and it's your job to interpret and then communicate what I need to them, because I'm not always the clearest, or maybe I'm too clear, and you have to buffer it.
You were pretty blunt in the throes of labor and delivery, for sure.
Yeah.
More blunt than maybe you normally are. And then I don't even know how much of this you remember. Our second and third children, it really went pretty smooth, but the first,
Yeah.
um, they had to take our son out of the room, and
Yeah.
everything was fine. I don't even honestly know what they were doing, but
That's what I thought you were going to say is one of the points where you felt the
immediate torn.
yeah,
And
the like the change, the shift in, just being my husband and now being like a father.
yeah, it's crazy how like instantaneous it
Mhm.
comes over you because I think we talked about this in one of the other episodes. Like, I would say it's like, yes, you immediately bond with your kids, but frankly, the whole time they're in, you're pregnant, like
Yeah.
you feel a
I'm
kick every
more,
now and
yeah, I
then,
was going
but
to say, mothers have the opportunity to bond with the baby before they're here, but I mean, dads, you can't
yeah,
really,
I mean,
not in the
you
same
do,
way.
but you don't. Yeah,
But
exactly.
so June was born, and I held him for a second, and then they heard something with his breathing,
Yeah.
and um, took him over to the little table, and then wheeled him out.
Yes.
And they were communicating the whole time with us and kind of trying to tell us like it'll be fine, it's fine. Um, but yeah, and I was still, it's not like it all just gets peachy after you
Yeah, they were
have the
fixing
baby.
you up at that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, and so it's like um there's still things going on with me, and yet they just wheeled our son away, and I remember kind of the hesitation, like the where Brian's like, what do I do,
Yeah, so if you've never done it before, the labor and delivery room is huge. And I very vividly remember I was in the center of the room. So you're on
Yeah.
one end, our kids on the other, and for the however, everything happens so fast. For the first like 30 seconds, I'm just like walking to the baby, walking back to Darcy, walking to the baby. And then they have to take him out, and it was something simple, like there was just fluid in his lungs or
Uh-huh.
something. I don't know, but for whatever reason they took him out. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh, what do I do?" Because
Yeah.
you're in pain. Clearly, I
Mhm.
could hear you. And then our kid is leaving the room. And I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know what to do right now. But that instant torn and that instant initial bond of like, oh, I'm his dad now, and
Yeah.
mom's incapacitated. Like, this is all on me. And obviously, everything worked out fine. But
Mhm.
that was like the first real glimpse of like
Mhm.
what the future's gonna hold.
Right.
And then you progress forward and instantly just start getting baseballs and fishing rods and everything else out now.
I know in the beginning with June, I remember um you being kind of like, I can't wait till we can do this or that, which all was going to be when he was older, but then you realize like, no, there's plenty, all these little, even the stages when they're very little, there's a lot for them to learn and take in, and
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of interactions that you have with them.
No, for sure.
You've
Absolutely.
always been good about that.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
So then like I said, so we have three boys.
Mhm.
Gonna kind of hit this from the just having boys perspective first.
Mhm.
Obviously, a lot starts going through your head because a lot in boy or girl, God puts a lot of weight on a father's shoulder. We actually,
Yeah.
our next episode, spoiler alert, we interview your cousin,
Yes.
and we're kind of talking about just kids in
The
general.
foundation
Yeah.
that you want to lay for kids. Yeah.
But he brought up, and you guys will hear this next week, he brought up how impactful it is that you get to share the name of God as being Father.
Yeah.
And so we did this earlier today, so now I'm going to kind of steal some from that earlier. But it really is true. Like, once you're a dad, there is just this extra weight that I don't know. It's really hard to put into words and express. But
Mhm.
like I said, from my perspective of having three boys, there's the spiritual side. There is the
More disciplinary side.
yes, the
Okay.
disciplinary side, and then traits and hobbies side, we'll call
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
But just in all those ways, it is expected of you
Mm-hmm.
to for me, put out three strong Christian males.
Yeah.
And I've learned to embrace that, and all our kids are super young right now. So I haven't had to impart all that much knowledge, but it is crazy how quickly you and I were talking about this the other day, how quickly they start to emulate you
Yes.
and copycat you from everything from certain phrases or the way you say things
Mm-hmm.
or just little things they try to copy of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were talking the other day, if I'm playing, I have a natural kind of head bob that I think happens when I play guitar, and I have caught at least two of the three
Yeah.
already thinking now. So it stinks for them. I think they think that's the way you have to do it, which is not. It's just a tick I have, but they think that's the natural way to play guitar. So
Mm-hmm.
they are learning that wrong way to do it, but either way, you catch them doing it, and it's like, oh shoot. And there's even things I've noticed. Like I laugh at myself now. There are little ticks and things that I do that I know my dad does, and it's funny because it's like it's not just hereditary. You just got that from watching them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that you have kids of your own, it's like, oh shoot, they really do watch everything.
Yeah.
Which is both really cool and really scary at all times because you better make sure you're live, you're on whenever they're awake.
Right. Dads are so unique. Like the role of father is so unique. Just like, I mean, you can say that about the role of mother too. But
Right.
the point I'm getting at is, for moms, we talked about this on the motherhood episode. You are in the thick of it. You
Mm-hmm.
are molding them in a very real
Yeah.
way. You're caretaking and all those things. And for dads, it's a little different. And it's not to say, like, obviously the boys love me. They love me,
Yes, they
and
do.
when they bump their knee, I'm the one they come to, right? Um, but dads are like superheroes. And
Yeah.
I think that's for boys and girls alike. I know my dad is for me. Um, they're just dads are very superhero like
Oh,
when
for sure.
you're a kid. Um,
Especially when they start liking superheroes, then
yes,
you have to be one of them.
yeah. And it's just I don't even know exactly how or why that comes about, but that's just I think that's a general, uh, you know,
Yeah,
thing.
and that's kind of what I mean by the some of the extra weight that comes with it. There's
Yeah,
extra weight of being a mom too, absolutely.
yeah.
But from the
It just looks
perspective,
different.
yeah,
Yeah.
from the perspective of dad, I do think a lot of the superhero complex comes in. Um, and I was thinking about this kind of in that same light. Um, our kids do, they like Spider Man and the
Mm-hmm.
Avengers and all that stuff, watch the cartoons. And they'll ask me stuff like, can you pick up a tree
Yeah.
or the house and stuff like that? Or how'd you get so strong and things like
What did
that?
they ask the other day? They said, can you pick up a car?"
Yeah.
And you said yes. And I looked at you across the room, and you were like, "Well, he didn't ask for how long." I was just
Or
like,
what kind? I mean, I don't know.
"Okay."
Europe has some of those really tiny ones. Might be able to just stretch a little before.
Yeah.
But one of the other things that comes with that, I was thinking, is because you're right. Like there, maybe some of this we just put on ourselves. I don't know, but it's like you do feel like you have to be. So when I get home from work, if I'm tired, and this is why I like having the commute.
Mm.
Because when you get home, it's game on. They are excited to see you, so you
Yes.
can't be tired. You can't already be upset. You have to leave anything that happened at work at the door, which, to be fair, any working mom out there has to do as
Oh
well.
yeah. Yeah, we're speaking in what is our reality, and we know there's different
Yeah,
ones out there where moms play the double role or dads
exactly.
play, or maybe it's grandpa or whatever.
For sure.
But I think you can still probably glean something from our conversation here.
Exactly.
So
From
carry on.
our house, they're excited to see you. You're also just a change of pace.
Yeah. Yes.
So you have to be on, and you can't be tired.
Well,
Um,
you do get to be kind of the when this is um if this is how your house looks, and maybe it's opposite for somebody, but you do get to be the fun parent a lot of the time.
yeah. Well, yeah, I
In
think
those instances, and then you also a lot of times have to be moms do a lot of the disciplining, but it's
yes.
funny that dads still have to. You would coin them like the disciplinarian because you kind of have to
Well,
be
you even
the.
see it in our house. If
Oh
they
yeah.
don't want to listen to you, it goes to a different level. If they, I don't
Oh
know,
yeah.
they're the same way. We should all have a healthy fear of the Lord. We are God to our kids, and they have to have a healthy fear of me. And so that knife cuts both ways.
hmm
Um, one thing I was going to say that's kind of funny. Um, you can't be scared around them either.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can't show any fear. I think kids pick up on that, and
hmm
to the point, there's two times this has happened. Once you were out of town, and once somewhat recently. Once you were out of town, for whatever reason, I had them outside, and it got dark. And look, nobody likes walking around outside in the dark, especially if you have your kids out. And it was me and June for whatever reason, and we're walking through the pasture, and he's kind of asking things, and all of a sudden you have to step up like, this is nothing, son. We just walk through this. Doesn't matter that we're in flip flops, and I don't know when we're gonna step on a snake, but it's gonna be perfectly fine. And in my head, I'm just like shining my flashlight everywhere, trying to look. But I had to pull that one off on him, and that was the first time I laughed to myself. I was like, oh yeah. I think this was before Dylan was born, and Clyde was like asleep.
Mm.
This was a long time ago. But then the more recent one was when I was on top of the shop fixing that hole,
Oh yeah.
and it is well documented that heights are not my favorite thing. I will
Yeah.
go up on them, but I am just extremely careful. I'm a cautious person. And I'm up on the top of our shop, which is probably 40 feet in the air. And it's a metal roof, and I'm sliding down and about to get on the ladder, and making sure everything's in place. And I was like, hey, come hold the ladder. Last thing I want is this thing to kick out from me
Yeah.
while all of y'all are watching. And what I think it was June, like, are you scared up there? And I
Yeah.
was like,
He asked
no,
you.
no, I'm not
No.
scared. Just being careful, son. You be careful too. But both of those always stick out for me of like, God, you can't show fear around them.
And I think, to be fair, I think that as they get older, you can share you can tell them your fears or whatever.
Maybe
But
when they're like 30 or something. I don't know. Before that, no.
but yeah, you don't want to make them fearful for you, I guess. So yeah, dads are superheroes, especially when they're in the young, little kid stage. And then, I think as they get into like the teenage years and they start to think that they know.
That's why you got to keep that upper hand.
Yeah, I know.
I may not have kids there, but I was one of the kids there at
Yeah.
one point too.
But as they get a little bit older, I mean, the hope is that they are consulting you in decisions because they, respect you and
Yeah.
stuff. And I think about like when I was a teen, young adult, and my dad was, my first call if I ever had any issue. Like he was like the fixer.
Right.
And so hopefully your kids, you're their first call there. And going back to kind of, I guess, the teen years, there's I think a big disciplinary role, and a stability that you can hopefully provide in the household when it probably gets rocky with hormones flying around and
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Me and my dad still laugh about this to this day. I don't. Maybe. Do you remember watch? I feel like almost everyone has seen this episode somehow. It must have been on like all 4 TV stations when we were kids. It was like this National Geographic thing on elephants.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Okay. All
Carry
right.
on.
So some of you may not have ever heard this. Me and my dad talk about it all the time. So on one of these preserves,
Mm-hmm.
they were having an issue with the elephants.
Okay.
And it was, they couldn't figure out why all the male elephants were like bullying. They were damaged. I mean, the rest of the elephant herd, other animals, the just
Going rogue, kind of.
yes, and they could not figure out what was going on. And finally, someone realized they were all kind of an adolescent age,
Mm-hmm.
and there were no other
Like adult
y-
male
no
elephants.
elder male elephants.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to bring in, and I saw this when I was like 10, so maybe I'm missing some details, but essentially they brought in a bunch of older male
Mm-hmm.
elephants. And those older elephants very quickly whooped all the adolescents into shape,
Yeah.
and the entire preserve ran smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been an argument on um, male father figures in a household
Yeah.
and how different that changes the dynamic. But right now we're in the throes of they're young, they're watching everything you do, but
Mm-hmm.
that that leadership quality is almost even more important once they do think they're too big for the
Yeah.
britches, because that inevitably happens too.
Yeah.
And like you said, from a daughter's perspective, you're going to be their first call, but from the son's perspective, they're going to think they know more than you all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
That's true.
But that you still have that dominating
Yes.
effect you have to hold over them for at least a little bit longer, I guess. Otherwise, they turn into rogue elephants.
Yeah. No, and it makes sense. That I think that your discipline, hopefully, and example and all those things, um, definitely come into play in sort of that like middle stage of life. I'm calling it.
There you go.
Um, and then I think as you get older, um, I think that you look at your dad and grow in appreciation, and pay attention more to their example, whereas you may have tried to lose sight of that whenever you were in the middle stages and going
Right.
through all of those changes and thinking that you knew better and stuff. I think as you get older, you can appreciate um, their role and appreciate their example more, um, and hopefully try to be more like them, assuming you had a good figure there, role model and figure there, father figure.
Yeah. It's hard, I feel like, and every generation probably does this, and we all think we're living in the most challenging time.
Yeah,
And probably maybe the world's getting worse. So all of us
yeah,
literally are.
could be.
Um, but in 2024, the biggest hurdle that I personally see is nobody wants to go back to like as they'll call it, like boomer days,
Mm-hmm.
where, and look, that was a super traditional household. Man
Mm-hmm.
went to work, woman was almost guaranteed at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leave it to Beaver style.
Yeah,
But a lot of times that led to no personal relationship from the dad. You were just
yeah,
straight work provider,
yeah.
disciplinarian, right? And there was
Lots of country songs written over that.
yeah, and there's definitely a lot missing there.
Mm-hmm.
But so what tends to happen is then things flip back the other way.
Yeah,
And now you get a lot of just compassion, which is good, but then a lot of the disciplines left out, and some of those leadership qualities that should be there. And so now here we are today, and it's you don't know what's going on in other people's households. All you can try to do is control yours, but you're
yeah,
naturally almost worrying, especially when they're going to like school and stuff, or
yeah.
start having friends like, "Ah, I don't want to be the dad that everyone's like, oh man, I don't, your dad's Well, actually, I wouldn't mind if they said I was hard, but you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
You're like you're gonna be measured up against what they see in other people's households, but
Yeah.
you have to stay true to it. And so there's so much of the if whether you want to call it like everyone gets a trophy, no one's a winner, no one's a loser. I think especially for boys, those things are important. Competitiveness and learning how to win, and especially learning how to lose,
Yeah.
and deal with those consequences. Like
Mm-hmm.
even with as young as they are, you and I both try to give them an option.
Yeah.
And like even tonight before they went to bed, here's your option, man.
Mm-hmm.
You pick it and you deal with the outcome of it. I don't care. I'm not mad at you.
Yeah.
But you're going to go to bed, and if you feel an emptiness because you thought you picked the wrong one, well, next time you're going to learn from that.
Yeah.
And I think that is a core thing that all boys have to learn how to deal with.
Yeah.
And almost more so than a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard because you constantly feel like right now the world is pushing you to like just let them be, just pamper them kind of.
Yeah.
And of course they need that compassion.
Well, it's honestly it's like we talked earlier, it's the
Yeah.
easier thing to do is just let them be.
Exactly.
It's harder to choose discipline and choose boundaries and those things. It takes a lot of effort
Yeah,
from
no,
the
it does.
parents' part.
But honestly, even like biblically,
Yes.
it will tell you that. And you know, leading into Father's Day, probably a lot of Sunday sermons are going to be, well, probably next week they'll be more like that. But you know, especially because of God being the Father, ultimate Father, there's so many Father callbacks in the Bible, like Psalms, Proverbs, Old Testament's like full of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even some of the New Testament. But I had to go look for a couple just to
Okay.
make sure I got them right. So I actually even pulled them up because most of the time I just quote them. And like one of the ones I like was Proverbs 22:6. Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more and more on just like that. Even talk about more like discipline, and that is comforting and kind of what you need to fall back on, even when the world seems to
I
tell
think
you that you're doing it wrong.
the version of that verse that I'm used to is train up a child. And I like that word train up or that phrase train up a child because it does imply like it is work.
Yeah.
Training them up. But when they are old, they will not turn from it.
Yeah, exactly. And we were talking about this earlier. It'll kind of lead into our next week episode, but sometimes you think you have more time. Like our kids are super young.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't completely, rule with the rod yet. But at the same time, getting discipline, like it's going to make their life easier.
Yes.
It will make their life easier. And especially if you instill those Christian values and stuff, they won't turn from it later.
Mm-hmm.
And then even from the New Testament, like Ephesians 6, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And that one hits even deeper for me because it's got both buzzwords in there.
Okay.
Don't provoke your children to anger. And I think that's where you can get caught up for both parents, letting your emotions take over,
Yeah.
You've got to separate your personal emotions from raising your kids. Like don't provoke them to anger. Don't just pick at them incessantly. Don't want to wear the hat too much of the disciplinarian that you're just disciplining them just for the sheer fact to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it also says to discipline your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of discipline, when it's biblically, I typically will take that on more of a Christian approach as opposed to just rules, follow it here, there. That's more of making sure you raise up a righteous Christian, especially in our case, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I one of the things I was thinking about discipline. And this is honestly, discipline is something that I struggle with because, like you're saying, it is a very thin line to walk.
Right.
You're not trying to be mean, but you're also trying to run just the amount of tight ship, like,
Exactly.
um, and it is very, very difficult. But one of the things that I like that Marty from Cowboy Church always says, and it's not in relation to discipline, but I think it still works. He talks about like when you're trying to witness to somebody or share the gospel with
Mm-hmm.
somebody. And, if you just kind of go in guns a blazing, they're going to get defensive about it, right?
Right.
And so he makes a big deal about, and I think he even has an acronym that I'm not going to be able to think of right now, but sorry, Marty. But he talks about like earning the right to speak into their life.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that's in relation to kind of witnessing to somebody, sharing Jesus with somebody. But I think the same principles apply here. If all we're doing is going around like disciplining our kids left and right over this and that, like you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
I think they are going to get defensive over it. They are
Yeah.
going to
Well, they get
revolt,
numb to it,
essentially.
too.
Yeah, they get numb to it. But if we are also putting in the efforts to earn the right to speak into their life, like Marty says, I think
Mm-hmm.
that works here too.
Yeah.
You've got to put in those efforts. And I always remember my dad saying, and I get it now, where he would say like, this is, discipline is not fun for us.
Yeah.
Whenever we're disciplining you, it is less fun for me. I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, but I do it because I love you. And I am looking forward to the day where, our kids can actually understand that. Because right now they just tell me I'm mean.
I know that's one of their new catchphrases.
That
They
is
like
the
to
new
throw
thing
around.
that June says is he's like, you're being mean to me. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But so in this talk, I believe it or not, I had a direction I was going with some of this, where I was talking about like in the beginning, dads are like superheroes to their kids, boys and girls alike, and then in as they grow older, I think they need your discipline, they need your advice. You are their fixer, and
Mm-hmm.
for boys and girls, I think it's hard for us not to get into this thing where we're like we know better, but ultimately hopefully they still are,
At least a little bit.
yeah, hopefully you're still earning the right to speak into their lives there. um but then toward the end, or I say the end, as you get older, um you're looking more to their example and you have more of an appreciation for the role um, that they played in your life
Mm-hmm.
and the impact that they had. And so, anyways, I was just thinking about that in relation to like our relationship with God.
Okay.
And so, think of like when you're first, I don't know how to phrase this, like getting to know God. You're first kind of
Okay.
entering into that, like, okay, I understand who Jesus is and all these things. You really do fall into that superhero category where you are in awe,
Yes.
more so. Um, you're in awe of them, right? And then as you are kind of in the thick of it, you're building your faith and all these things. I hopefully the more you're digging into it, the more you can appreciate the wisdom. You can hopefully glean some wisdom from
Mm-hmm.
from the God's word, from your like I said, your relationship with Him. And then as you go further along in your Christian journey with God, um, hopefully you are looking more and more to His example. Like maybe you have kind of fleshed out some of the semantics of your faith and all these different
Right.
things, but you're really just paying attention to His example and trying to be more like Him. And I think that you, in turn, grow, hopefully, this is all theoretical and hopeful, right? But
Right.
that you grow more in humility.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I don't know. I think that same trajectory can be said about um,
Fatherhood.
fathers
Yeah.
and fatherhood and your relationship with your kids.
No, I think it parallels immensely.
Yeah. But those were some of my thoughts on fatherhood. I'm not a father, so I just thought.
Spoiler alert. I had one other unique kind of thought that had popped in my head earlier. Let's see if I can make this come out. I think, which episode back was it where we talked about, biblically a man leaves his family and starts his own?
Oh, goodness. I think we've referenced that a few times.
A few times,
so
right?
Carry on.
Well, this is a brand new
Okay.
sort of revelation of it, on how and more of like why that makes even more sense.
Okay.
Let's see. So it's like this will kind of go to like the father and son. This is going to be a lot more difficult to get out. It makes sense in my head, I promise.
We'll hang with you. We're patient.
Yeah. So it's like a common thought in relationships that a daughter's going to naturally look to her mother. We've kind of talked about that. Like,
Yep.
It's more natural for you to go to your mom versus my mom for advice. Kind of same thing we're talking about fathers wise, but you're going to always fall back on your mom for help with the kids. And I think that's safe to say for most people. You and I both, I mean, like, that's your natural disposition. I think even from both of our families, we've noticed that.
Right.
But kind of to where we're talking about with like this discipline and everything from a father imparting on his son. If I raise all three of our boys as strong Christian men, teach them the ways of the world, impart whatever knowledge I can on them, and we feel good about how we've set them up, then you are releasing them out into the world. Your work's kind of done.
Yeah.
Not that, and it's kind of goes to your furthering relationship you're just saying. Not that, like, I still call my dad every time something happens and I need help, right? But I think there's and we're not there yet, so I'm projecting, but I think there's like a trust factor of they're going to figure it out. If they need me, I'll still be here, but it's on them to go out into the world.
Yeah.
It's on my sons to go out there. If I have raised them to know how to treat a woman, how to know God, how to build and fix things and handle their own life, then they're set up for success. I'll be here if they need me, but they can go out into the world.
And that's kind of the point that I was making about, like, in the, in your later years, I feel like you are looking more to your dad's example.
Yeah.
And emulating that and growing in humility and appreciation for that role. Not necessarily consulting them over every little thing, because, like you said, if the job's been done right, then hopefully you're out there on your own.
Well, and it's like you do need to go start your own pack. Like,
yes,
you almost like can't have too many alphas in the room. Also, like, you may still require advice and stuff from your own dad, but you have to go forge your own path. You have to go start your own pack, so to speak. And I think this is one of those differences of having sons versus daughters, like kind of how we were saying, you're the hero to both. And we'll probably wrap it up at some point saying this, like, in a lot of ways, my dad's still my hero. Absolutely. But it's a different look now that I'm the man and the dad. But I think when you have daughters, you're always the hero, right? Like that shine doesn't really wear off as much when you're a daughter, because it's a different role you're kind of taking on with the different children. And when you were the superhero from the dad's perspective and you've raised yours, now it's their job to go be superheroes. I probably should have asked my dad this when we were over there earlier. He wouldn't have understood what I was saying. But you know what I mean? It's like, now you get to go be Superman for your family.
Yeah.
Or you're not Robin anymore. Now you're Batman.
Yeah.
out there. We can do this all day. But it's your turn to make sure you're that man for your family.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you have to make sure your spouse knows that as well.
Yeah. Okay. I have a couple questions.
No, wasn't prepared for that.
Well, you should be by this point. Just
well, you didn't
weren't
send a
prepared
shared
for
note of any questions.
Okay, so what do you think is the hardest thing about being a dad?
Hardest would be, well, I think living up to that pedestal they put you on.
Like
Especially
being the superhero?
yeah, I mean, look, it's easy when you've had a good day and um, they tell you they love you and you're so awesome and stuff. Those are the easy days, right?
Mm-hmm.
But especially like disciplining any child is always hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's no joke when they say this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. But a step further is when you do walk out of the room and you're like, I didn't handle that right.
Mm-hmm.
And because there's always, as young as ours are, it's not like it's going away, but and it's a learning experience for me as a dad as much as it is
Mm-hmm.
for them, just their first glimpse at it.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I feel like I've handled a situation wrong or almost like let them down
Yeah.
in the way that I handled something, that like hits even harder.
Yeah.
And fortunately, our kids are really young. And so I like sit there, I beat myself up for a minute, and I'm like, I need to learn from this. So when they get older, I don't make the same mistake.
Yeah.
But there's been times where you lose your temper, getting frustrated, or I mean, like you've even told me from time to time, like, I don't know if you handled that right, and you're correct, and those are the ones where it's like it kind of eats you up a little bit of like, I don't want to lose that pedestal that I'm on.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of beat yourself up when things go not according to plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you gotta, just like we've said multiple times, you gotta give yourself some grace. And that's where I think you spend you make sure you double up on your efforts to be able to speak into their life.
Oh yeah, for
you know?
sure.
And you do a good job of that. Okay, easier question here. Hopefully, what's the best thing about being a dad?
Oh, in a lot of ways, that's harder. I knew that was coming. The best, I think,
When you see them do your little head bob.
yeah, and I was going to say uniquely the fact that they're all three boys. I don't know if God will grace us with a girl later on down the road, but right now our situation is three
Mm-hmm.
boys, and they're all of an age that every single thing I do, they want to do.
Yeah.
So the low hanging fruit is obviously the music and stuff like that, and they enjoy doing it. And it is funny. You always hear this from whether it's a major league baseball player and their son's coming up,
Mm-hmm.
or famous musician or not famous. Like I, my kids don't even actually play yet, but um, if they did, I would have zero regrets in just like sitting there and watching them do it.
Yeah.
And not only because they'll like doing it, but also because they got that straight out of
Yeah.
watching you. And so, yeah, those like head bobs and little things they do,
Mm-hmm.
while I probably need to rein it in so they don't look as weird as I do doing it,
You
it's
don't
still
look
cute
weird.
that they emulate you doing that. Or
Yes.
like how they want to like cock their hat and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I love when because it's, again, we've brought this up multiple times. We do a lot of work on our property, and
Yeah.
so Brian is always a stickler for, if he's working in the Yopon or the brush or whatever, he wears long sleeve, pants,
In
boots,
contrast
gloves.
to you in shorts and a tank
Yeah, I
top.
know. I'm a believer in, like,
And
if
you
it's
wonder
gonna
why you
get
have
me,
chiggers.
I know. I'm like, if it's gonna get me, it's gonna get me. But Brian does the right thing and like wears long sleeve, long pants, gloves, boots, everything. And when the boys see you get dressed like that, they go get their long sleeves and their I need pants. Where's my work boots?
Yeah, we go through a lot of clothes on the weekend because of that, but
Yeah,
it's worth it.
yeah. So, and they come out there looking like little mini Bryans.
Until
Okay.
they don't want their hair fixed that same way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That happens too. All right. Any final thoughts?
Well, I'll ask you one since you've kind of set this out. What are you most thankful of for your dad?
Oh, surprise.
I had to get you with one too.
My dad always like I have a unique, I feel like maybe I don't, maybe it's not unique to us, but I was always very much a daddy's girl. Always wanted to do everything that he was doing, and he would always let me.
Yeah.
I was
You are what they call a tomboy, I think.
yes, definitely a tomboy. But those things always, I think, made him proud, which made me happy,
Mm-hmm.
and have definitely shaped a lot of who I am. So I'm very thankful that he brought me along for everything and taught me all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I'll answer
Yeah.
that myself
What about
too.
you?
I had even thought about this, but I can't vocalize it as well. So having my dad, I feel like, has definitely left big shoes somewhat to
Mm-hmm.
fill. He works his tail off still.
Yeah.
Very involved in the church still.
Yes.
He was the one who even got me into music. Like everything I do is basically a
Direct reflection.
yeah, like I'm in construction because he was in construction. I play music because he played music. All these things, and so it's a high bar that I feel like set there, and I appreciate it though because I
Yeah.
can also have a straight view of like this is what it's supposed to look like, and even even things
That's so sweet.
yeah, even things that are funny when we kind of talk about like the adolescent stuff. When I say my dad was hardworking, it was not always by choice. If we had a day off, like you said, like oh, first week of summer was good for me. First week of summer just meant it was first week of going to work with dad. Spring break, going to work with dad. Winter break, going to work with dad. Even on the weekends, and it's funny because in the throes of it, I typically never minded it. At some points, I could have even gotten out of it, but I just grew to really enjoy it. And I think all of those, and those are some of like the fondest memories I'll even have.
Yeah.
And so all of that has like shaped who I've become. It's like I said, my work ethic for what I even enjoy doing work wise, and even my hobbies and stuff like that. And of course, there's like a slight different approach I'll obviously take from him, but it's all just a direct straight line from what I saw and how I thought it should be.
No, that's very good.
And even to the point, it's funny because even if it's not your talking about like the mimicking and stuff, when we go to the personality types, like I'm an introvert.
Yeah, I was gonna say it can be played out a little different, but
Yeah, well, but it's funny because I'm an introvert, but I guess you would call it like on the cusp. Like I'd be a low extrovert, high, or I don't know, however you say it. I'm in the middle, 50-50 almost. But my dad's definitely way more like you, right? Like never met a stranger and stuff like that. And so it's what makes me almost like a unicorn because trying to like emulate that.
Yes.
Some people will think like, oh, no, you're extrovert. And it's like, no, I just
I just had a good example of an extrovert in my life.
To copycat that. And from him always being highly involved in the church and how he was at home, and we kind of talked about this a minute ago, like it changes a little bit in the terms of how they look like your hero. But they still are, like, for girls, I think it maybe doesn't fade as much, but for guys, it's definitely, or at least me, it's definitely still there too. It's just a high bar to always try to meet, for sure. But
Yeah.
I do appreciate that bar's there and you can see the goal that you want to attain.
Yeah. That's very good, dear.
Did you expect anything else?
All right. Tell us, you kind of teased, what do we have coming up next week?
I don't know what we're going to call it. I just know what we did earlier today.
Yeah. So we're talking about the importance of imparting the faith on our kids. And we have a special guest in my cousin,
yes,
Bubba Morgan, and he's going to share a little about his family. So there's a lot to learn there.
And we already know some of it, so we can already
speak to it.
It's pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. So stay tuned.
So that is going to wrap up fatherhood for all of you, getting you in the mood for Father's Day.
Yes.
Definitely make sure you shout out your dads, spend some time with them.
Write them a note.
Yes.
All the things.
I don't know if they want flowers, but maybe find something. Has to deviate a little bit from Mother's Day. Maybe you could barbecue for them or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Actually, most dads just like to do that themselves. But we're
maybe you can
going
buy
to
the groceries.
Yeah, there you go. That's a help. We're going to the lake.
Yeah.
For our Father's Day weekend. So that is where I want to be. And definitely, if nothing else, make sure you reach out to your dad. Think about your dad. I'm sure they'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
So as we have unpacked fatherhood and what that looks like in our house, now you go discuss.